Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm Natalie, and I'm the COO of AAL Innovations. I'm stepping in today for Outline to host today's sections of AAL MICS. AAL MICS stands for the Major Innovative Construction Showcase. It is a recurring interactive showcase that spotlights breakthrough work from founders and innovators in AI and adjacent creative fields. Each section is designed to foster exposure, meaningful connections, and knowledge sharing, driving both individual growth and collective advancement in the APAC innovation ecosystem. And Adeline had the privileged opportunity to go into Kenya to join the Building in Kenya webinar with Shawn before and was very impressed. And let me introduce a little bit more about our guest today. So Shawn is the CEO of SiteSeer. SiteSeer is a leading provider of innovative cloud-based solutions for the construction industry. The mission is to revolutionize the way construction projects are managed by creating a unified, data-driven ecosystem that empowers all stakeholders to collaborate effectively and make informed decisions. Their cutting-edge platform leverages the power of artificial intelligence to provide a comprehensive digital and visual overview of the entire project lifecycle. By collecting and analyzing vast amount of data, they generate actionable insights that enable proactive project management, minimize delays, and ensure successful completions. Shawn is the CEO of SiteSeer and is an innovative thinker who offers fresh perspectives, innovative ideas, and maintain poise under pressure. He is a team player with excellent communication skills and academic qualifications who has recently graduated with a degree in architecture from the University of Manchester, posing a proven ability to ensure projected architectural designs are functional, safe, and economical and meet the needs of the clients. Excellent communication skills to keep in touch with clients to ensure that the project design match their needs. So let us welcome Shawn here today. I think you are muted now, Shawn.
Oops, my bad.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Shawn Muraya. I'm the CEO at SiteSeer Technology and co-founder, where we, as you've heard, try and establish technologies for the construction space and AEC space using both AI and normal traditional SaaS. So yeah, that's our introduction, and we'll probably get into more of what we've built and who I am with this discussion.
Yeah, let's have a little bit chit chat before you show us your products. So I'm curious to know, like, you graduated with a degree of architecture from Manchester. So what inspired you to shift from being an architectural designer to start a tech startup?
Interesting. So when we were in uni, I think things were, I don't think they were very exciting. I think when you're in university, you're told by your professors, the world is your oyster. You can design anything, especially as an architect. You're told to think outside the parameters of this is, a good brief, be creative. And I loved it. It was really exciting. I thought this is how architects will be for the rest of your life, where you just get all this creativity and nuances and your own perspective on things. But the reality is, when you go back into the workforce, you're more or less, I wouldn't call it a junior architect, but we didn't do anything. You come back to a workforce, your boss is giving you a brief and you're told to draw this building squared, and that's it. You're not supposed to think. You're not supposed to think for yourself. You're just supposed to follow the lead of your seniors, which I guess it's in every industry. But for creative, especially when you're talking about design, it felt like I was being held by my feet. So by the time I finished the undergrad, I went back and I said I wanted to do project management, because while I was working for that 1 year, we went to site a lot and we got to interact with a lot of different people, the contractor, and I loved going out to site. I was tired of being in a desk every day, drawing the same lines. So I loved going out to site. And that bridged the gap between now me and me as a person who likes talking with people and construction. So I went into project management, loved it. It was really exciting. Again, very nuanced. You'll be told different things about how project management works in the UK, and then you come and see how it works here, and it's night and day. So again, you have this huge philosophical belief of, wow, project management is like this. It means that it's about people and culture and how to convince people to work for you and work better for you. So there was a lot of psychology in that. But we came back and it became more about just following up on people, mundane stuff, like shouting. It wasn't the same thing. So I don't know. After that, I just entered into tech because I think I'm a creative still at heart. So I was trying to figure out, is there a solution between all of this and why isn't there right now? So what can we bridge a gap between having this architectural, which I felt was a bit desk job-y, and project management, which I felt was a gap in communication? And yeah, how do we bridge that? So that's basically what Birdside is.
Yeah, that's a very like cool decision to make to shift to building a tech startup. So I was curious, like, can you share a little bit more about the startup scene that's happened in Kenya?
Yeah,
Like
no problem.
the story.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. The startup scene is extremely ripe here in Kenya, extremely ripe, but for specific industries, I would say that. We're having a big push into fintech, agri-tech, infrastructure things like mobility, which as an African or even East African country is what we actually do need. We need more of infrastructure before you get into really cool technologies that the developed world has. But that's not to say that we can't be creative in thinking about other solutions that aren't just infrastructure focused. So there's a lot. In fact, I think we're number 2 in Africa in terms of funding, if not one nowadays. But again, 90% of that bulk of that cash is going to fintechs. So anything that has a financial layer, you can literally create it overnight and it seems you'll get funding. But the infrastructure and hard techs is where we really need to push. So e-mobility, things like construction tech and prop tech, health tech, things that are integrated into the infrastructure layer are harder to raise the capital for and are still a bit more new and hard because it's not tested. Fintech has been tested. We have M-Pesa, we have all the good examples. But when you try and say we have this construction tech with AI or health tech with AI, it's kind of met with skepticism until you prove a lot of traction. So that's why I think African founders are also very, very, very good because you start off with traction. You start off with like, I can do this. I have the solution. I'm getting my clients before you do the fundraising. So it builds character, it builds grit, and it builds longevity, I think, here in Kenya. But it's really, really exciting. It's really ripe. I still believe it's in its infants. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Maybe I'll ask one more follow-up question before we let you to do the demo. Like, so you mentioned about like maybe a lot of fun goes to fintech related startup. So I'm curious, like, then where did you get your investment from?
That's an interesting one. So we're fully bootstrapped. Our investors are our clients. And I still believe that is the best sort of investment you can get because it has allowed us to, I would say, steer the course how we see it by getting real-time feedback and pivoting immediately without having someone to answer to. We do have a board of advisors, though. So these are people who are in the industry. There's a few that are actually investors, but aren't. So I have a board of investors, a board of advisors from different industries that understand, and I prefer it that way. Build out grassroots moving in. To be start off looking for funding at the beginning. We had good pitch decks. We had everything that was working for it. But again, the VCs, I believe that are here they don't have the appetite without the traction and without having a fintech layer onto it because they also don't have that much capital to spend, unlike the San Francisco, China, Berlin. So if you have a small pot of capital that you need to ingest into Kenya, you would tend to want to put money in things that are proven. So they'll only look at the fintechs, health techs, maybe the agri-techs here and there. And once we realized that, we were like, all right, we will just go to the market and actually get better feedback, get our traction up, and then raise. But we ended up getting our traction up and realizing we don't need to raise right now. And it works in our favor. That
sounds like a new business model to learn from. So I'll pass the time to you now to share us a little bit more about your products and to show us what you have for today. You can share your screen.
Okay, so let me just do that right now. Okay, you can see the screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. So SiteSeer, I think maybe if I do a smaller introduction before we go into the demo, will maybe help you wrap what it is that we're doing. So SiteSeer answers 3 questions, which is what happened on site, what is happening on site that's current or present, and what's going to happen. And we do this in 2 steps. We look for the human instinct. You can only trust your eye and you can only trust data. Now, the problem of both of those situations in Kenya is that we didn't have a single source or single portal for everything. We had multiple different softwares for multiple different disciplines and stakeholders, which created the data silos. Nobody's communicating together. And our next best option was WhatsApp, which is not ideal when you're trying to run multi-million dollar shilling projects in construction. So we decide let's solve the first thing, which is trusting your eyes. How do you do that? What is it? What can we do that can get data in from what's currently happening on site to your offices? And that's our first product, Visualize. Visualize works by had one, but anyway, strapping a 360 camera to a hard hat. You walk your site as normal. We take 4K resolution, 2 frames per second. We stitch those together to create a digital twin. Now, this, for instance, is just our command dashboard. Our command dashboard is what is currently happening across all the different projects that a developer is going to be having, and you get live alerts. So this is what our clients have usually on site any given time. So if there's an issue, a field note, a snag, they can come and get in their data. Yeah, this is for people that have multiple projects. But let me just start with one of the demo projects. So you start off with the different phases so you can know where your data is classified. We go by hierarchy in terms of what clusters you're working on, what areas you're working on, what locations, and everything that's happening on site. The problem where we're faced with normal snagging and normal field notes is there's no hierarchy. We take a picture on our mobile phone, we send it onto a WhatsApp group and say there's this issue. But what floor, what building, what cluster, what phase, what section? So having this visualized dashboard helps us with that. So we can go in granular and we can actually go and test or look for where those issues currently are. Good. Go to visualize through. So you can capture the different units for the different, this is still just dummy data, so it's not really our client's data. But what this allows us to do is look at each building, each floor in each project so that we can actually track back what was actually going on, where the issues currently happening in the site. Quickly open for you another one. Interesting. There's an error on my screen. But this helps us with the Captures app. Captures basically means we see every panorama that's actually happening on the site and all the field notes as well. The path shows how that person has actually walked through that site, so they're able to collect the data strategically. So if there's an issue that is raised, you can go to that particular point and see where those issues are and where they're being faced. Does that make sense? Are we okay with the visualize aspect of things?
Yeah, I think everyone is clear with that.
Good. Now, the second aspect of what you're going to be seeing on site is going to be your field notes. What we've done with the 360 cameras that are capturing, I'm not sure why it's not opening on the demo, is we can now create field notes. Field notes are all the issues that are currently happening on site, tracked back to the location and positioning of that site. So we have 2 instances of this happening. We currently use AI to do the bounding boxes, but we're training it through people actually using the application. So every issue that's being collected from that particular site or that particular project can be classified by location, severity, and type of project issue that it's doing. This is training our small model to do this detections automatic and creating the field notes. So now you don't even have to do this yourself, but the system can flag this for you early enough based off the captures that we have done. And we do the captures once a week or twice a week, depending on the project scope. And again, one of the most important things that we've done is make sure that we have what we call portals. The other big problem that we currently face is that everyone is working, as I said, in different stakeholders or different systems and softwares. So in our dashboard section, you can invite your different project managers, surveyors, architects, whoever you're working with as a stakeholder, and we generate for you unique codes that only that person will be able to access your data. So no one else but that person will be able to share. So that's if you're working with your project manager or an architect and you need him to see this issue that's currently happening on site. He might be at home, but he can actually access this as well. So what we do with the field notes is we can create a report with also AI and both just machine learning on all the different issues that have currently affected that building. How many times were they captured? How many times were they repeated issues? Because that's another thing people aren't able to track correct. If your subcontractor is creating the same issue over and over and over again, how many times does it take before you actually create that action? If you've hired a labor team and we're getting the same issues reoccurring, those are things that need to be flagged as well as comments. So things don't live again on a WhatsApp chat that aren't helping your data in any way. They're not helping your system and they're not helping your current exposure of what's actually happening on site. And that's the what I call the eyes, the visualize. You can see what's happening. You can track back where those locations. You can go through the clusters and look at the hierarchy for everything. And you can track your field notes on the canvas. So that's basically being able to see where those issues occurred, in which project and which building. That makes sense? Awesome. And all of that feeds into our visual field notes report. So this is the intelligence layer for what we're seeing on site. The second thing or feature that we have is called track. Now, this is where most of our clients have been really interested in and looking at because it's data intensive. Because that's one of the things that we realized that we needed to solve was not just a visual aspect, but the day-to-day activities. How much are you spending on site? What's currently happening? Where your delays are? And how can we synthesize this report for you using two different data streams? So that's your bills of quantity, your schedule of works, and your BIM model. Once you ingest all of that into our system, we scan everything and we create for you a cluster. Each cluster or each project or each building now has intelligence behind it in terms of just your normal tracking references. All you need to do now from the visualize is capture your daily reports into the system. We verify everything and we can tell you which buildings are behind, which ones are on track, and which ones need help, particularly on those different clusters. So again, for us, hierarchy is very important. We want to make sure that we can go as granular as possible. That means to exactly which floor, which building, and where those delays are and what workmanship is being done. So track can help you understand which buildings are behind, which ones are ahead, how far they are ahead, behind, or are in progress, basically. So you can go into your buildings, you can see your schedules, you can see all your completed, where your cost is, where your gaps are between each building and variances. So we still use normal algorithms before AI, and AI comes in a lot later, which I'll get into, because one of the things that we realized here in Kenya is we didn't have even the base layer. Before we brought in a lot of the AI, a lot of the complexities, we needed a way to visually see our data first. And how do we have that in one single data silo? Once we had that core is when we added all the AI features thereafter. So here is a simple thing. You're able to see your schedule for this particular building and not any other. So you're able to track your costs as well. See where you're behind. If I really wanted to check if there's an issue on that particular site, sorry guys, I don't know why that is having that issue. And most importantly, we can still also see the 3D model for that particular floor. So if you're building, this is a major net, for instance. We've used 3JS and other open source materials, as well as one that's paid, to have BIM come to our systems here in Kenya. So we don't use Autodesk directly or Revit because they're very expensive. And a lot of people here in Kenya don't even have or use them as much. So we created a light version or a light package version for that so that people can be able to track their progress to what was built. Because again, we have this issue where once we design, that 3D model is only used for renders, it's used for advertising, it's never used again. But we need that information. It really helps us track a lot of the things that are required. And because every BIM model has an express ID, we can attach progress to it as well. So again, you have one canvas to manage all of these current issues. You can look at your daily reports. You can catch up on, maybe I can show you like the work packages, for instance. So these are all the different work packages for that particular building that they need to finalize and do. They have predecessors and successors. So able to track your budget per work package that allows you to see where your variances are when it comes to the reporting. So you can see all your targets. Also, another thing that we added was targets and features. So once you ingest your BOQ, one of the major things people were looking for was, I want to save money. Because if you're not saving money, what are you doing, right? So each line item in a work package and schedule has a way to set a target rate that you want to save. So once you keep updating your daily reports, weekly reports, and monthly, that granularity can be showed of what actually are you over budget or under budget for each line item for that particular building through all your resource costs. So that's your labor, materials, and equipment that are scattered around those particular tasks. And once you're done with the base, which I believe this is what we call the base, is now when we've brought in all the AI stuff. So the AI only has three things that we currently use, which is the graph rag, because every single document, every single work package and task has to have a dependency or interconnected node for us to make sure that the information being retrieved is actually correct. So we did like an audit on one of the different projects. We had almost 30,000 different pages of different documents from LPOs, goods received notes, the BOQ itself. So we had to figure out first, how do we create a graph around that? Maybe I can open it for each particular project. And how does this information connect in terms of your projects? So where does your approval flow comes in? Where do your compliance and networking? How do you have your NCA portal or access of your licenses? and who regulates them. Once we get all this information for that particular project is when now we feed that into Sarah. So our AI is called Sarah. Sarah is our chat interface that allows us to talk with all of these data points, your progress, your field notes, your issues, your look ahead schedule, and it's project specific or building specific as well. I can go in and add more context. I want all the details for the current project I'm working on or entire project schema. So that's, or not even entire, on particular flows that you're interested in. So you can filter that graph or that information through the different projects. If you want to know what critical flags are currently coming in, where the issues, where those gaps. So I don't need to go through all my pages of different tabs of work packages, tasks, orders, invoices, or even my targets. I can talk to my information or my chat directly here. And this calls into our graph knowledge base, which gives you an answer. So it's not naive RAG, it's agentic RAG that we've now replaced here. And the last thing we did was give project approval flows now using our AI and automations. One of the gaps that we saw in this industry has been that everybody wants to be paid or needs to be paid. But there are certain processes and steps that need to occur. The IPC certificate and cover letter need to be done by the architect. But before that, we need to figure out how much evaluation of work was done on site. Is there any evidence for that work being done on site? Where are those documents? Where are those LPOs or signed invoices? Then the contractor needs to submit a claim. The claim goes into the architect. There's a whole, I'm sure everyone knows that in construction. The problem is most of that takes nearly 90 days here in Kenya because, again, data is scattered. Nobody knows where anything is anymore. So you're trying to look through your WhatsApp to make sure you have the evidence. You're looking for invoices through another channel. You don't have maybe a CRM. So one of the workflows that we worked on with now, the whole automations, is being able to speed up that process. Our AI can actually go and look for all that information to give you the valuation reports and still have human in the loop. So we don't approve everything. We aggregate for you those results for you to then approve. So if you're the QS, you're the value, you're the architect, all you need to do is come and start the workflow, and it's going to look around for all evidence docs, all applications, everything that's in the system for you to get faster reports so you can get faster deposits. So yeah, once you activate it, it can get you the report. You can view specifically what the data was, the automations that was done, and the files that you can download. I think they have a few that are available here, even on the valuations. So again, this is done both by a human in the loop because there are gates. Everyone has to do an approval step and sign before the AI can proceed, meaning that you do the last verification. We just do the data aggregation for you to speed up this process. And yeah, this can be exported. This can be saved with your branding. So you'll be able to see that particular unit up to this date, what tasks were completed, what is the cumulative project cost, how confident was it? Because AI also needs to give you the confidence score, but also most importantly, it needs to be signed and needs to have the evidence. So the goods received notes, LPO, everything is aggregated for you so that you can have one report in a single click as opposed to looking for everything all at once. And yeah, that's basically the platform. We have the two things we mentioned, which is being able to see, which is visualize. Unfortunately, I'm not sure why it's not opened. And two is the data, which is track, managing your whole bills of quantity. And once we have those two data sets, we have now brought in the second layer, which is AI helping speed up the aggregation of the information and processes. So that's SiteSeer in a nutshell. That's a short demo of what we've currently built. And again, it works best with your data. This is still just data that's scattered in demo data that we can't really show anyone else's. But that's us in a nutshell.
Thanks for sharing, Shawn. So before I open the questions to the floor, I actually have a few of questions that I would like to ask about you and your company. So maybe the first question is about, for SiteSeer, is it actually like implementing into Beam, or it's something like separated from it?
It is implemented, but we don't enforce it because we tried, quite frankly, before to have that as a mandatory, but not a lot of people had it or used it or even knew how to operate with it. So we were almost excluding nearly 60 to 70% of the current pool of our clients. So we made it very optional. We made it, how do we make the floor plan the compass instead? Because in Kenya, or I'm sure in the world, we're used to seeing that. It's a document you see on site, you see a gunshot across pasted on a wall. So we didn't want to overexert too much of what people are already used to. So we don't reinvent the wheel. If you're used to a floor plan and a canvas or a schedule, how do we use that and emphasize the same thing, but in a single system that people can communicate with and chat with? So we kind of halted on the BIM. It actually works. Everything is in there. But I think only one client uses it. Nobody else does.
Yeah. So I can see like it's like a cloud-based workflows that you guys are proposing to the clients, right? So, but then like sometimes like maybe like a lot of architects or like engineers are used to using their own software and they may be a little bit hesitant to like switch to another new, like especially a cloud-based workflow. So are there any strategies that you use to convince them to trust this ecosystem? And maybe like, could you share successful clients with us about how you successfully implement this workflow with them?
Okay, I think those are two interesting ones. One is we had to really emphasize that none of this is replacing anybody to start, because we had to make that very clear that the problem isn't the skill sets that we currently have in our industry. It's that people are just working differently in different data silos, as you said, different softwares. But there was no particular software for project execution. So that's why we didn't go into the four stages: is the planning, design, build, and operate. We didn't want to go into the planning or design because that I feel like we have enough talent for. So we didn't want to have like AI that can draw buildings and stuff. That is what I think people are best at, and we should keep it at that. But we don't have something to hold when we go to site. There's a huge disconnect between the site and office, and most of the people who are noticing that is like, I don't know what's happening. Yes, I sit as an architect in my head office, but there's something going on site. So I have two options. I can go to site or I can call someone. Now we're trying to get you to have that data both at site to be able to make more informed decisions. So a lot of people haven't really fought it as much as we thought they would. We knew there were some architects that we had that were, in fact, I don't want to mention the firm, but they weren't excited that they're not able to go to site, because every time you go to site, you're paid. So every time you're called to do an inspection, you get some money. So we had to figure out how in the system that you're still being the one liable to sign. It's not us. You have to still go to sign regardless if site is there. But you just have a way to plan. If you know the issues on third floor or 50th floor on a building, I can speed up my process of what I need to do, and I still get my payment. And secondly, in terms of onboarding clients or businesses, I would say the workforce has not been as hard as the project owners. So architects, project managers, we've not had an issue so far with them. Biggest problem has been the people at the top. One, because you have to educate them that there's an actual problem, and then they have to be humble enough to accept it, to work with you. So those two things were really, really the gist of what we had to figure out. There's a problem. I know you're used to working a certain way, but you could work better. And in Kenya, that doesn't really tend to work unless you're talking money, 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 money. So how do you show that you're saving them money or making them money? That if you can get that into granularity, and that's what Track does, then they're more inclined to listen to you. And secondly, we've had to be very careful of how we position the system. We had to make sure that even when we pitch, we don't overload people. I showed you everything just because it's demo purposes, but we've always tried to bring people on board slower. One feature at a time. We start off with visualize. They see their whole project on site. Trust is built, we move on to the next feature, because handing over all of your data all at once is also a very scary thing. All my financials, all my books, everything all at once. And we're cognizant to that. So we don't insist. The ones that are brave enough and understand that they need this because they're a big enough problem, we usually start with the full system. But we've always figured out just break them in one step at a time, and it's become a lot easier to onboard people with that.
Yeah. Would you think that there's a client culture difference between UK and in Kenya?
Sorry.
Would you think that there will be like a client cultural difference between clients from UK or from Europe and comparing clients in Kenya?
Absolutely. Like it's unfortunate, but that's a reality. Out of all of our clients, most of them are international. That's now the other thing. In fact, I'd say 90%. the local builder slash developer they have this notion, and I think maybe in the West it's easier because they're already used to something like a subscription model in their head. And so getting new subscription, it's okay as long as it's certain line items. They believe that if I can improve 1% on different fields, then I can make a lot of effort quicker. So if it's Dropbox, just so I can manage my files, I will pay for that. If it's Trello, so I can have project management, I'll pay for that. So they end up having a lot of, they're used to that. But here, it's more of like, why are you trying to come in between my bottom line? Why are you trying to take my money? And we're like, we're not interested in that. We just believe that this actually could help you. Secondly, we have to be also cognizant of also the construction practices that were encouraged for a very long time, as well as the interest that's being given on a lot of contractors and developers. And that's something we noticed, by the way, when we onboarded. A lot of the high-end clients had better interest rates, so they were not as financially constrained for their cash flow as compared to most underserved or smaller developers or smaller contractors. So you'll find that's already a big gap where you have people who are having to pay higher interest and you're now asking them to pay you more, and they don't know if you're going to deliver on the value. So you have to prove it to them first before they can actually get there. And the clients that are coming from the West, maybe like you're saying, Manchester or other international clients who are used to subscription models or are used to maybe how things work in terms of all the different softwares, so they can clearly see, okay, amalgamating it into one, and I'll take that one subscription as opposed to like the 10. So that's why I've seen the both. It's not really a blame game situation. It's the reality. A lot of them are being given unfair terms compared to bigger developers. Or again, education, which is what we have really tried to do, is we have to tell people that there's an actual problem before they actually get on board.
Yeah. Anyway, so perhaps for your business model, so is it like a subscription base or it's like a payment by project?
It's both. So we make sure that we have a subscription just so that we can secure data, secure all the images. These are high resolution images and high resolution stuff, and BIM models are quite heavy. So we still need to pay our cloud providers, which is a set fee. But we're moving to a model of percentage of ACV thereafter, where if your project is this amount of value, we're going to charge you range between 0.06 to basically 0.4%, depending on the scope of project, of your annual construction volume. That's what ACV is. That's an industry standard across the globe. It's not been introduced well here because whenever you talk percentages with projects here, they get very up in arms. But we have noticed that we must get into that just because of how much data we're already processing. It's not cheap. And if we're going to give a better service, then the servers need to be up, the correct protections and scope need to be done, and the AI models and providers need to be paid.
Yeah. So I think you touched upon about like there's AI adding on top of the original like data analysis. So would you like to explain a little bit more about what type of AI is SiteSeer actually using? Like I saw LLM, or like are there other kind of machine learning included in your product too?
Right now, we're tinkering with two things. There's the object detection model, which we host ourselves to now just train on different things, like looking at the floor plans, looking at what people are already annotating as their issues, so that we can better detect them before someone finds them. Because we're finding we're still a very reactionary industry where we're waiting for something to happen and then make a decision, as opposed to there's a fault line that you missed on the third floor that you need to look at by next week. Otherwise, it can become a bigger crack in 2 weeks. So we're trying to look into the leading of that, which requires two models, the AI, the object detection model. The rest is what I'd call like an agentic RAG system. So it's not naive RAG, it's agentic, meaning we have different harnesses and different protocols of how we're retrieving that data, re-ranking, searching the different files. Because the good thing is, why we insisted on creating that base is so that our system can read that information from the base layer as itself. So we have row level security, make sure no one else can read your data. But AI is very good at finding where those data points are, but it's also not that good because most of the servers that were built, even the ones we use, weren't AI native. So you've had to figure out that you have to almost mirror your normal database with one that you want AI to run on or retrieve on. So everything that happens in the main platform, we duplicate it into one that our AI can chat to via MCP, via normal API calls and everything else. Same with the information with like documents, for instance. The document and chunking strategies are very nuanced because you need to chunk so that the information doesn't run out for certain lengths of document. But in construction, these documents can go on forever. Like about 200 pages of context that it needs to remember. So we found we have had to look at different strategies. And then the other thing that we've had to work on was short-term and long-term memory. Those are two different problems that AI right now is facing, including ours, where how do you know what to answer based off the context of now? So the short term, what happened in the last month, and long term, so if a project has been a year and a half, how does it know that context and know the short term to give you the best answers? So it's different strategies, different models, different setups. There's not one single thing that we've tried because we've had to try very many different interconnected systems for it to like work.
And I know, like, I've also noticed there's like a lot of AI startup that's also trying to maybe develop a product that's about site management, as we can like regularly see more people developing tools around this topic. How do you think SiteSeer standing out among other tools in the market, or like how would you see SiteSeer as going into a more targeted directions comparing to the other tools in the market right now?
Okay, that's an interesting question. The one thing that we've done is make sure we look at it as an ecosystem as opposed to a software ecosystem. And that's why holding off on the investment is a very good idea, because beforehand, the investors that are coming in wanted us to focus on only one of the channels. Like they say, repeat one thing until it's good, focus on this one gap, and then just sell it nonstop. The issue we have, or the opportunity we saw, is that there's still no ecosystem. Ecosystem means like how are each one of these people interconnecting? How is data moving from one pipeline or data silo to the other? And we focused on that as a base layer before we even brought in AI, because if we created the ecosystem, then information flow, including AI, can be very easily traceable because now everything is in one as opposed to many. How normal systems work. So if you have Slack and other systems, you're creating several MCP servers for one of those softwares to hopefully get the right information from that particular software's database. It again creates more complexity, which is why I think AI is having this issue of accuracy, as opposed to just merely creating everyone and every sort of portal to work into one. So we have the architects working, we have the field notes and snag, we have the BOK and construction scheduling, we have the document management system. We were trying to get into procurement, but we left it because procurement is a whole different monster on its own. But everything else in this sort of scope of the project is what we brought in and what we're managing. And by having the ecosystem layer, we can still integrate with other competitors or just work with it as a holistic approach as opposed to a singular data silo again.
I think that's really, really thought about it. So maybe now I should open the questions to floor. So if anyone have questions, feel free to type it in the chat or you can just ask us. So I think Adeline has a question. So, hi, Shawn. This is super interesting conversation. I really agree with the ecosystem statement there. Much more resilient than a singular solution. Do you think the target for SEER is to become a one-stop shop? By the way, what do you think can convince local clients that the ROL is justified? Maybe this requires a cultural shift as everyone asking for a free trial. And can you share more about whereabouts are your international client based?
Interesting. So the ecosystem is what we really wanted because we didn't want to create more gaps in the system. We didn't want to create more holes. We tried to plug them all in at once. So you have all your issues, discovery, communication, tracking, and reporting in the one single dashboard. And second question was ROI justified. This is where where we've had to be very creative because you can only show ROI on their particular project. It can't be ROI on another one's project. It works to sell if I tell you I've saved 15% on someone else's project, but if it's not going to work for you, then you'll not actually adopt it. So we've had so many people have asked us for free trials. We had initially refused before, but we opted to have what we call like a paid trial. So instead of paying for the 24 months or 12 months system, we can do like a 60-day pilot at half the rate or 30-day pilot at half the rate. That way, we just make sure that you know you're paying for some value as opposed to just taking a system for the sake. Because I believe if we give everything for free, then even they won't use the system because now they have no incentive to it. So we've had to really be careful of how we approach that. And the last question, so the work can only be shown on your project. And I think if we do 30 days, you'll be able to see, this makes sense. The cultural shift is absolutely paramount. It is something that we've had to think creative. Again, you only solve things with, money. And what we're working on, but still in its infancy, is working with those working with institutions to give contractors and developers better rates if they use our system for tracking. Because the reason why construction loans are very expensive is because it's called capital risk. It's one of the highest in Kenya as opposed to even like unsecured or any other services. So interest rates vary because of risk. And one of the risks that they're facing currently is we don't have oversight. We're getting reports that don't make sense. Someone has cooked something up and I'm left in the dark. So you'll find banks saying, okay, I'm not interested. I'm not going to give this loan out, or I need more evidence. Take another 30 days and get those books in order. So by alleviating this gap they're calling risk in the institution level, we want to give the developers and contractors better rates because now your risk has been alleviated. Then you need to give them better rates, And that's what we're looking at in terms of how we make sure people adopt it and even the industry adopts it. So it's not necessarily cultural, but there's an incentive that people want to have done for it. And I think the last one was international clients are just the ones that have come to build here in Kenya. So from Europe, I think 2 of them are from England, but they're building very big projects here because our projects, the system works when you have scale as opposed to one sort of house. You have many units you're looking at creating, and it helps with that.
That's nicely answered. So is there any more questions? We're still welcoming questions from the audience. And there's one more question that we always ask to the guest who is in this podcast. It's must have questions here. So if you have to use one word to describe success, what would it be?
Adaptability. Because if you create something that everyone adopts or most people adopt, or you can get that adopted across the board, then that's a definition of success. Because I think once people adopt it, everything else becomes like a byproduct. Your revenue, your ARR. If nobody's using it, you will never hit the success you're looking for. And if you're not actually getting people to use it, then you're also not helping people. So on both sides of the spectrum, I think mine will be adoption. If you can get majority of people in construction or real estate adopting this technology, that's success for me.
Adoption. This one is a new answers that we have for the past 20 episodes. That's pretty cool to listen to new answer every time.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Good.
So let's see. So we have another question. I'm greedy and want to ask one more question. As a startup founder, what's the most important quality to have?
I'll say 2 things. One is grit. Everyone says grit. Absolutely, you do need grit. That's just so that you're able to understand that there will be more rejections than yeses. And how do you manage those rejections and yeses? And being able to understand that the rejection does not reflect you or your character or your system. And don't take it personally. It is just that is not your client. That is not someone you even want paying for you. Go find the right clients, go find the people that will actually adopt your system. And the second thing is you just have to wear many hats. There's nothing about the CEO or I'm the CTO or I don't know finance. I'm going to offboard the finance to somebody else. I don't know about the books. Let me get somebody else to do the books, or operations or sales, or I don't know how to sell. Let me get someone for sales. You have to be everything and you're forced to be everything. And it's a blessing and a curse at the same time because you'll have to figure out how to leverage many skills. And that's what makes you defensible. It makes you replaceable even to AI because I think the saying is master of none is one that's good. Jack of all trades, master of none, but it's always better than one. Basically meaning you just need to have many different skills. You don't have to be a master in one, but having all those different tools in your arsenal just makes you think clear, have many, and it also helps you because creativity stems from what do you know from different pockets of life. If I only know one thing and I can't think of anything outside of this, then I won't even think of other creative solutions. I mean, a painter who has done woodworking would come and look at things differently because he'll start thinking in creative ways that he learned from the discipline. So I think that's what I'd say for that as well.
Sounds like it's a superhero to be a startup founder. So I think Adeline have a follow-up question for your response. So Adeline is asking, what's the ratio between rejection versus acceptance in your experience?
Ratio between rejection, it's in different states or different periods. So I'd say in the beginning, it was nearly 95, 97% rejection to acceptance. You're going for like only 5%. Then the more the brand has grown or the more people are hearing about it, it's moved down to like maybe 80. We're maybe at 70. So the problem is no longer about even just rejection. It's become a problem about time. So we're trying to bring in what we'd call lead time dropping. Because someone would like the thing in week 1, you're following up with him week 2, he's saying he likes it, but he's on the fence. Week 3, week 4. So it's not necessarily rejection now, but then they'll come in after the 5th week. So you're having this long, prolonged discussions or meetings and going out and having this repeated discussions of why it should help you. And that's where we're at now. It's no longer like full out rejection. It's just become, I need to think about it. Then they see something, they're like, wow, okay, let me talk to you about it. So I'd say right now we're like 60% of rejections still brought it down, but the lead times we're trying to make sure it's half, because once we get those timeframes reduced, then we can onboard people faster so that we can bring more value and maybe in turn get new clients.
Yeah, I guess that's a universal experience for all the startups. So we have one more question from our audience. So how long is the onboarding for a new client? And have you had any issue with user experience? Who fits the information to the platform? Is it the client's representative or it's someone from your team?
So onboarding, I would say depending on project site, and also if you have everything ready. If you have one building or one tower, then you're most likely to be able to have all the floor plans for the different floors. You should have the bills of quantity and schedules already, because that's how you even get the project started. And that is ingested nearly immediately, almost a day, for everything to be done, set up correctly, make sure all the documents and all the things you're talking about, your schedules, are done correctly. If you're doing multiple projects or multiple buildings, I would still say a day or two. The problem is not even the onboarding for the information of the client. It's like, make sure we train them, make sure that they know that what tab to click and what to do from there. And that takes a bit more time. That takes maybe couple of weeks even, just so that we make sure that the data is being put in the system correctly. And that's mostly on the day-to-day activity. So your daily reports, your LPO orders or GRNs, creations, and everything else is more or less handed over to the systems and AI. Oh, and who feeds the information to the platform? It is you as a client. We don't feed any information because we believe that you are the custodians of your data. You should be the ones to manage your system. We just create the layer for data viewing, processing, and management. Everything else has to be done self-serve by the client. It does two things for us. Again, we're not replacing anybody. And secondly, and most importantly, is just indemnity, quite frankly. It's your project. If we were to come in and do a lot of this handing over, then you're basically appointing us as a project manager, which is not the same as a SAP subscription. You're talking now 3% of the project. But because we are just a data hosting and processing layer and you're the person custodian of your daily tasks, then you handle everything. We just make sure everything is safe, correct, all the stakeholders are managed, and the system can just help you make decisions a lot faster. Make sense?
Yeah, it's clear. Yeah. So if there's no extra questions, then I guess that's wrap up today's time. So a huge thank you to have Shawn sharing his journey and show us his incredible work that's happening at SiteSeer again. So I hope everyone have enjoyed today's sections, and thank you all of you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing all of you in the next MICS again. Thank you again for joining us.
Not a problem. I appreciate the time and thank you for the invite. Really exciting, and hope there was some value and you understand that what SiteSeer is doing.
Yeah. Let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.